international TV presenter and journalist, and together with my colleague Andrea Sankey, it is our great pleasure to welcome you to the second Antalya Diplomacy Forum. İkinci Antalya Diplomasi Forumu'na hoş geldiniz.
Thank you, Ali, and welcome everyone. I'm Andrea Sankey, journalist and host of The Newsmakers on TRT World, and it's my honor to co-host this year's forum, Recoding Diplomacy. Now, as we know, this meeting could not have come at a more relevant time, given the distressing events of the past few weeks. So over the next 2 days, we'll be addressing the key issues facing global diplomacy and international relations, and most importantly, we'll explore ways to keep diplomacy as innovative and as effective as possible.
Indeed, the challenges facing the world today have probably never been so many and so serious. Last year's great challenge was, of course, how to cope, how to deal with a global pandemic. Right now, it is about trying to stop a war in the heart of Europe. The stakes are very high, as the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who's with us today, knows very well. Diplomacy is needed more than ever as the impacts of the Ukraine-Russia conflict are felt all around the globe.
Also, from food security to climate change, the green economy to global governance, and of course, conflict resolution. We're welcoming here heads of state, ministers, policymakers, diplomats, business leaders, academics, to address the numerous challenges that are facing our world right now.
Well, I'm pretty sure you've all noticed that the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, before it even started, has created global headlines due to yesterday's meeting here with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba, a meeting that was facilitated by, of course, none other than our very, very first speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Turkish Foreign Minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım, muhterem hanımefendi, saygıdeğer devlet ve hükümet başkanları, mevkidaşlarım, değerli hocalarım, basın mensupları, sevgili gençler, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler. İnsanlığın binlerce yıldır kendine meskin edindiği, medeniyetin tarihsel merkezi, Akdeniz'in hafızasını tutan, şair Hamit Macit'in ifadesiyle bir ipek kozası kadar parıltılı şehrime, Antalya'ya hoş geldiniz. Türkiye'min dağlarından, ovalarından aşıp Akdeniz'de buluştuğu, dünyanın her köşesinden milyonların akın ettiği bu topraklarda Asya, Avrupa ve Afrika birbirine yaslanmakta. İnsanlığın istişare yoluyla uzlaşma geleneğinin başladığı, dünyanın ilk meclisinin kurulduğu
of the world has been established, and humanity's tradition of compromise through consultation flourished is here. Under the auspices of Your Excellency, the Antalya Diplomacy Forum is one of the youngest and most vibrant innovative ecosystem for the new ideas and discussions is being hosted by these lands, which stands as the arch enemy of darkness and hopelessness. Antalya Diplomacy Forum is a product of our enterprising and humanitarian foreign policy concept conducted under Your Excellency's leadership, and ADF, which made its debut last year, gathers for the second time this year as well as a well-known forum. ADF not only serves as a venue of ideas to the Turkish, also to regional and global diplomacy. The main motto of the forum, Think Together, Act Together, has brought together today 89 heads of state and 39 leaders of international organizations, bringing together 175 countries. This means that more than 1/3 of the world's countries are represented here at the highest level. We would like to express our gratitude to all our guests who have accepted our invitation. Esteemed participants, we are going through times which flow not as a peaceful stream, but as powerful as the Manavgat waterfall of Antalya. We are tested not by an era, but a new age, not by a turning point, but a tornado, not in a tunnel, but in a labyrinth. We witnessed that almost everything we knew as constant changes, and every negative event we would like to leave behind reappears in different shapes. We simultaneously keep in mind the unavoidable interaction of peace at home, peace in the world, and the principle of, if you want peace, prepare for war, as well as the teaching of let the man live so that the state will survive. Our call for a fairer world, more fair world, a global order and diplomacy at the service of justice, law, prosperity, and peace brings us together here today. As the author describes in A Tale of Two Cities, these times are the best of times, the worst of times, the age of wisdom, the age of foolishness, the epoch of belief, the epoch of incredulity, in season of light, the season of darkness, the spring of hope, the winter of despair. As foreseen by His Excellency President Erdogan at the UN General Assembly in 2017, we are facing the threat of falling into a new wave of chaos and cruelty. We are at a point where history is back and where our gains as humanity are falling apart. And we are at a point where history is back and where our gains as humanity are falling apart. The philosopher said, history is lived forward, but can only be understood by looking backwards. Those of us in this hall need to develop sound predictions for tomorrow and robust policies for today while living history forward. We live in times where brutal force has dissociated itself from reason. The use of force is only within the purview of the powerful. This actually displays the weakness of the architecture of the international and regional system, which was set up through a painful experience. For instance, principles such as inviolability of borders were fundamental. The UN Charter and the Helsinki Final Act served as basis. The Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, the Vienna document, provided confidence within the political-military realm. Now Europe is searching again for a systemic stability anchor. In the coming years, we will have to tackle the risk of the post-colonial system crumbling in the entire world. This would be a catastrophe, because the existing institutions and mechanisms are already unable to meet our needs. For instance, eruption of new conflicts cannot be prevented and the ongoing ones cannot be resolved. Furthermore, technological, economic, social, and political transformation and the past we assumed we had overcome pressure us simultaneously. It's as if we are moving back to the future. Technological innovations and digitalization are at full speed, but not everybody benefits from this equally. We experience a digital divide. Global inequality further deepens. There's a need to resolve newly emerging tensions, manage change, facilitate adaptation, and promote cooperation. The increasing number of stakeholders in diplomacy also call for new approaches as well to compose a symphony. with different instruments to conduct an orchestra formed by different stakeholders, such as the civil society, the business world, individuals, and public institutions are among the opportunities as well as challenges for diplomacy. We need a new language and a new understanding. Through digital capabilities, we need to spread messages in the most convincing manner while fighting against disinformation. But most importantly, we need to put diplomacy at the service of peace and development. In other words, at the service of humanity. Diplomacy is the main instrument in updating multilateral institutions, strengthening international law, reinvigorating negotiated agreements and arrangements, and in rendering solidarity effective. Vision, leadership, and consultation, in other words, talking to and exchanging views with each other, are necessary for getting out of the eye of the storm. Antalya Diplomacy Forum fits exactly into such a context. The era we live in created a necessity to reevaluate diplomacy, because diplomacy needs to be more efficient, effective. We feel this need in every geography and on every topic and experience it every day in various regions around us. With these thoughts, we decided that the theme of this year's Antalya Diplomacy Forum would be Recoding Diplomacy. Because we can no longer postpone the need for a new assessment, verification, consolidation, innovation, and restructuring in diplomacy. In other words, the need for a recoding of diplomacy. In this endeavor, ADF offers an environment with a global reach for a vision, as well as for leadership and consultation. Your Excellency, Mr. President, esteemed First Lady, and esteemed guests, when we look at the participation to Antalya Diplomacy Forum, this venue resembles a United Nations environment. Politics, science, business, and public opinion circles intersect in Antalya. In other words, a united minds environment is being set up in Antalya. I want to emphasize this because we cannot act together unless we resolve our problems and differences in our minds. With this understanding, we prepared a comprehensive program for the forum. We will tackle challenges for political leadership at the level of leaders. And we will focus on Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, the Balkans, South Caucasus, and naturally, Ukraine. We will discuss in depth the issues that weigh heavily on today's political, security, economic, and social agenda, from conflict prevention to global health. We will examine the effects of digital transformation and climate change from an innovative perspective. We will also discuss the effects of developments in the field of metaverse on diplomacy. In addition to our panels, different formats such as individual interviews will further enrich our program. We will put business circles in the driver's seat in certain panels. Some panels will be co-hosted together with our distinguished international partners. As last year, a special focus will be put on women and youth. We think that the experience which our youth and women gain through ADF will be the most comprehensive investment that we can make for peace and diplomacy. Antalya Diplomacy Forum is one of the long-lasting gifts that the Turkish Foreign Ministry, which will celebrate its 500th anniversary next year, offers to the world. With these sentiments and thoughts, I wish Antalya Diplomacy Forum a great success this year as well. Thank you all. Greetings.
Çok teşekkür ederiz.
Thank you so much.
Now, from Turkey.
Şimdi
Unfortunately, Antonio Guterres could not be with us in person today, but the UN Secretary General has sent this address to the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, which I am honored to introduce right now.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, I thank President Erdogan and the government of the Republic of Turkey for hosting the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. This year's forum comes at an extremely challenging time for our collective security. The senseless conflict in Ukraine is causing death and devastation to the country and its people, with enormous security risks for the region and the world. It has forced more than 1.5 million people across borders and disrupted the global economy with unforeseeable consequences. It has multiplied the danger of miscalculation and escalation. There is only one way forward, the path of dialogue and diplomacy. Excellencies, diplomacy is the essence and spirit of the United Nations Charter, a document with one overarching goal: to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The drafters of the Charter had witnessed the unspeakable damage caused by the Second World War. To prevent it from happening again, they built a collective security system based on the fundamental idea that diplomacy should always come first. Recoding diplomacy, the subject for this year's forum, means first looking back in order to understand and build on the foundations that make diplomatic work possible. And those foundations are clear: respect for international law, sovereignty, and equality among states. To recode diplomacy also means looking forward and recognizing that diplomacy is a living process. It needs updating and revitalizing so that we can respond to the evolving needs of our time. In these challenging times, recoding diplomacy means a relentless and tireless search for peaceful solutions, however and wherever they are to be found, even during the darkest days of violence and strife. That is our shared duty and solemn obligation. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the UN Secretary General Guterres for addressing this very distinguished audience. And of course, we're very much hoping to welcome him here in person for the third edition of the ADF. Well, the Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu already pointed it out that though only in its second year, the Antalya Diplomacy Forum is actually very much on its way to establish itself as an important international platform. And just like last year, it is once again being held under the auspices of none other than the Turkish president himself, who of course is with us again here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the Republic of Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Saygıdeğer devlet ve hükümet başkanları,
distinguished heads of state and of government, distinguished representatives of countries and international organizations, dear members of academia and of the intellectual community, dear youngsters who are the leaders of tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all with my most heartfelt and warm feelings and with respect. It's a pleasure for me to host you in our beautiful Antalya, the pearl of the Mediterranean, the cradle of civilizations. This is the meeting point of Asia, Europe, and Africa. Antalya, the city of history, tourism, and culture. Welcome. and I would like to thank each and every one of you individually for accepting our invitation. I hope that the Antalya Diplomacy Forum will prove to be auspicious for our countries and for the entire humanity. Despite the pandemic conditions last year, we successfully held the first meeting of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. I believe that the messages of peace, dialogue, and solidarity we give from Antalya in a painful period when all humanity was struggling with a health crisis does add a very different meaning to this forum. The favor shown to the second Antalya Diplomacy Forum indicates that our wish will turn into reality in a short time. I mean, our wish that the forum will turn into a ground where the heart of global diplomacy beats in time. The fact that the first high-level contact between the two countries took place here at the level of foreign ministers after the crisis in Russia and Ukraine shows that the forum has started to achieve its purpose. I see the strong dialogue between the heads of state and government, country representatives, and other guests participating in the forum, as well as their contributions to the session, as very important. Likewise, I welcome the intense interest of our youth, who are the guarantors of our future, towards this forum. I believe that the second Antalya Diplomacy Forum, which we organized with a wider participation, will continue on its way as an international event that has proven its worth. Distinguished guests, my dear friends, as our world prepares to leave behind the first quarter of the 21st century, humanity is longing for global peace, for tranquility, and for prosperity is also increasing. There is a lot of progress in science, technology, agriculture, industry, communication, and transportation opportunities, but we see that we as a humanity have not yet been able to resolve our fundamental issues. Terrorism, hunger, poverty, injustice among continents, armed conflict, and civil wars, in addition to environmental disasters which are caused by climate change, these all continue to be at the top of the global agenda, unfortunately. Economies are growing. Skyscrapers are rising. Certain people's wallets are swelling up. And certain countries are getting richer day by day. And statistics are painting us a more prosperous picture in the world. But unfortunately, children continue to starve right next to us. The hunger virus costs lives of more people around the world each year than the coronavirus does. Today, a child dies every 10 seconds in the world simply because they cannot find a bite of bread or a sip of water. Due to instability and conflicts, millions of people are forced now to leave their homes and their lands. The lives lost in the Mediterranean, in the Sahara Desert, or on the top of a snowy mountain reveal the desperation of humans. Now, here, I would like to share with you some striking figures that should make us all think. Since 2014 alone, the blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea have become the graves of nearly 25,000 travelers of hope. In the last decade, the number of refugees all around the world has more than doubled, and it has thus reached 85 million people. More than 2 million Ukrainian refugees have been added to this number in just 15 days. And we understand that the number of displaced people will increase even more in the coming days, in the coming period. Currently, 1 billion people struggle to survive on less than $2 a day. In fact, each of these numbers alone is enough to show the injustice we are facing. But the thing is, each of these numbers is a life, is a person. They are mothers, they are fathers, and siblings of somebody who have the right to lead a dignified and secure life. We live in a world where children wither from desperation when they are still very young. 800 million people do not have access to basic foodstuffs, and hundreds of millions of people go to bed hungry every day. Now, let's face it, the kind of lasting peace, the kind of tranquility and stability we dream of cannot be established in such a world. Let alone preventing new wars, no one can feel safe in an equation where even decades-old conflicts cannot be resolved today. Today's world has turned into a global village, a gigantic village. And in a place like this, no matter where we live, we cannot afford saying, oh, I don't care about other people. The thing is, we should know that every fire we can't put out, every conflict we can't stop, every oppression we can't prevent, every problem we don't go against will eventually affect us and will burn us too. We have witnessed this bitter reality many times in Syria, in Yemen, Afghanistan, Libya, in Iraq, in Arakan, and in many other crisis regions. In these conflict regions, millions of civilians lost their lives, and mostly women and children. Civil values and human traits have been severely injured. In the meantime, confidence in international organizations has hit rock bottom. Terrorist organizations and extremism has gained ground all over the world. Ancient cities, which are the common cultural heritage of humanity, have turned into rubble. In all of these crisis regions, which are sometimes ignored for geographical reasons or sometimes for cultural reasons, we have paid a price, a cost of negligence. Not only those who are responsible pay a price, but all of us as humanity do, and we still do. Dear friends, history repeats itself for those who do not take lessons from examples. When lessons are not learned, not only history but also suffering repeats itself. The Ukraine issue stands before us as the latest example of this truth. Now, first of all, let me underline something here. Turkey is both a Mediterranean country and a Black Sea country. Ukraine and Russia are our neighbors and friends through the Black Sea. And we are dismayed that the crisis between our neighbors has turned into an armed conflict. The escalation of the tension to this current stage has concerned us the most, has worried us the most. We can never excuse aggression against the sovereignty of a country who is our neighbor. We reject the illegitimate steps that disregard the territorial integrity of Ukraine, especially the illegal annexation of Crimea. Since 2014, we have expressed our clear position on Crimea on every occasion, and we have expressed it expressly, openly, on every ground, on every occasion. we have always kept this issue on the agenda in all of our meetings with both the Russian Federation and also with our Ukrainian friends. Now, in 2014, when Crimea was invaded, the entire world, the West, if they had said something, I wonder if we would have encountered the picture we have encountered today. But when Crimea was invaded, people kept silent, and those who kept silent are talking today. Well, the thing is, justice cannot prevail in only one part of the globe and not prevail in another globe. What kind of an understanding is that? So, unfortunately, the international community did not display the necessary sensitivity and did not provide the necessary support for the elimination of such injustice. So Ukraine has been left alone in its just cause. Now, today, we are faced with the devastating and painful consequences of problems that can only be resolved through diplomacy if strong will is displayed in time. As we see the civilians leaving their homes, children full of fear and anxiety, when we see cities in ruins, the innocent dying, our sadness grows exponentially. Now, let me share with you an example. Think of a young child being kept by his mother, the mother crying. And I saw that the child started licking the tears of the mother. He was wiping the tears, licking the tears of the mother. I mean, this is the kind of picture. I mean, does the world deserve this picture? I mean, can this really be possible? Why such a world? I mean, we are here exactly for this. Likewise, another anecdote. Again, a young child whose father is a police officer. Now, the child is slapping the father with one hand and also beating the head of the father with his other hand. The father, again, is a police officer. And we're not talking about a teenager here. We're talking about a young child who is at most 3 years old. I mean, does the world deserve this? I mean, that police officer, is it his duty to stop the tears and begging of the child? Or rather, is it his duty to fight against terrorism and anarchy? Now, looking at this audience today, including everyone who is watching us in front of their TVs, let me turn to you all and say the following. We have to build the world of peace, not that of war. At this current stage, we believe that fueling the fire further and exacerbating the fire will not benefit anyone. While supporting the legitimate fight of the Ukrainian people, steps that will harm and discredit this fight must be avoided. Now, there are people of Russian origin living in the Western countries. Fascist practices against them and against the Russian culture are never acceptable. For example, look at Germany. Think of an orchestra in Germany, and the conductor of the orchestra happens to be a friend of Putin. And just because he's a friend of Putin, he is dismissed from his job. Another example, in another European country, what you see is that there is a world-renowned person. I'm talking about Dostoevsky. His publications in that country are banned. Now, Do you know what we liken this to? It was Hülagü in Iraq in the past, at some point in history. There were libraries in Iraq which had been burned. What's happening today is going back to those days of Hülagü. We don't want new Hülagüs. Diplomacy, humanity, no one and nothing deserves this. Now, Turkey spent considerable efforts both to prevent loss of life and to re-establish peace and to re-establish stability in our region. Our hope is that moderation and common sense will prevail and guns will be silenced as soon as possible. Now, I had a talk with a friend today, and he said, a SİHA, a drone, in other words, was dropped in our country, and he's here in this room. And this was a totally irrelevant country, mind you. As it turns out, these guns, these arms hit unconcerned or irrelevant countries too. So we have conducted and are carrying out an intense diplomacy traffic that started before the crisis and has continued until today. I have so far talked to more than 30 leaders today. Likewise, our foreign minister and other ministers are in contact and talks with leaders. As in all of our discussions and contacts, we will share our solution proposals with our interlocutors during our contacts today and tomorrow. And we will continue to make every effort, including the use of the powers granted to our country by the Montreux Convention, to ensure that peace prevails in our region. Dear guests, dear friends, while focusing on current problems, we should not lose sight of the main reasons that reveal, enlarge, and make these problems inextricable. Behind many of the issues I have outlined here is the establishment institutionalized after the Second World War. And it is obvious that the current security architecture, which prioritizes the interests of the 5 victorious states of the Second World War, does not and cannot meet today's needs. This system leaves the fate of 193 members of states of the United Nations to the mercy of 5 permanent members of the Security Council, and it is an unjust system. With the crisis in Ukraine, it has been revealed that there are much bigger shortcomings and structural problems beyond the distorted system. When one of the conflicting parties is a permanent member with the right of veto, the coercive role of the Security Council has been wasted, and the system has practically gone bankrupt. Now, resolutions taken in the United Nations General Assembly do not have an obligatory nature. As a result, no steps could be taken to end the conflicts. Think of it, I'm talking about 141 members. And as they cast their votes for and against one or two members, could we attain a result? No, we could not at all. Can we have justice like this? This is exactly the point. So, in order to establish a fairer world, for a long time we have been saying the world is bigger than 5. And we have been drawing attention to this aspect of the system. We have been saying that it should be reformed according to today's conditions. But although the shortcomings of the system are known, reform demands have been ignored because those holding the veto power did not want to share their power. Temporary membership, which sounds funny to me, is an attempt to cover the structural problems. And we're talking about 15 temporary, I mean non-permanent members, and 5 permanent members. Interesting, right? And to become a non-permanent member, countries are spending all that effort. They are conducting lobbying efforts to become a non-permanent member. What difference does it make, even if you become one? We did go through this. Does it help? No. You just put your hand up or down. The real thing is rather about being one of the 5 members, because whatever those 5 members say is implemented. So, non-permanent membership has tried to cover up the real problems of the system. And countries like us, which do not hesitate to speak out loud what we think are right, we have been tried to be silenced with unjust and baseless and extremely ugly accusations. But when we say the world is bigger than 5, we're not making a demand for ourselves, for our own country only. Rather, we are trying to defend the rights, laws, and common interests of the entire humanity, as well as the rights of our nation. In fact, the events we have experienced have shown us how accurate, appropriate, and relevant our observations and proposals are. I hope that the same reality is seen and understood by the permanent members of the Security Council, too. It is essential to establish a new global security architecture that will protect peace instead of status quo, and that will serve all humanity instead of the interests of those 5 countries only. With the belief that a fairer world is possible, we will increasingly continue our efforts in the coming period to reform the United Nations. And I sincerely believe that you will provide the necessary support to this fight. We will wait for a bright future. Dear friends, Turkey needs not only a strong will, but also a new paradigm in diplomacy in order to realize the projects we pioneered in the international arena. We believe that our approach to diplomacy should also change. It should be transformed and be reconsidered in the light of the kind of experiences we live. Tradition, experience, custom, and habits are of course important in diplomacy, but all of these alone are not enough to solve the kind of intricate problems we face today. In addition to the ability to solve problems, rather than that, actually, diplomacy should be utilized more in preventing problems and avoiding tensions. The primary task of diplomacy should not be to establish peace, but to reinforce peace and stability. The real skill is to get involved in a timely manner, proactively, before problems sprout. Otherwise, it is inevitable that costs will increase, time and energy will be lost, and suffering and persecution will deepen. It is important that we develop a proactive, entrepreneurial, and innovative understanding of diplomacy together, without rejecting the experience of the past and centuries of experience. There are good and successful examples, as well as a rich treasure from the past that will guide us in these efforts. There are examples. The Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, the Alliance of Civilizations, the European Union, and the African Union. We should make use of these examples. And in this context, I find that it is quite appropriate that the theme of this forum has been identified as rebuilding diplomacy. The discussions to be held under this theme and the presentations to be made by people of competence will open up new horizons for us, I am sure. I hope that the second Antalya Diplomacy Forum, where critical issues regarding our region and the world will be discussed, will lead to new initiatives, to new proposals, and the emergence of new ideas on diplomacy. In concluding my remarks, I would like to express my gratitude in advance to all of our guests for honoring and contributing to the forum on behalf of my own self, on behalf of my nation as well. Through our Minister of Foreign Affairs, I would like to congratulate all the members of our Foreign Ministry and everyone who contributed to the making of the forum. Special thanks to the people of Antalya for their sincere hospitality towards our guests. And I hope to be able to see you again, and hopefully we will meet with you again and in and for a world where we don't have wars, but where peace prevails. My greetings to you all.
Çok teşekkür ederiz, President Erdogan.
His Excellency.
So honestly and from the heart. Now quickly, we would like to remind everyone here to please keep tweeting our hashtags. It's very important for this year's forum. They are hashtag ADF 2022, hashtag Meet for Diplomacy, and hashtag Recording Diplomacy. Let's keep the world up to date on all the important discussions and meetings that are happening here in Antalya at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum.
Indeed, let's make sure that those hashtags are trending very soon to let the world know what is taking place here and spread the messages throughout the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, this actually now concludes the opening of this year's Antalya Diplomacy Forum, but rest assured, this is only the beginning of an intensive two-day diplomatic marathon.
That's right. There is so much more to come, but we will take a quick 15-minute break.